This video is brought to you by Backblaze. That's unlimited computer backups for Macs and PCs for just $6 a month. Get a peace of mind knowing your files are backed up securely in the cloud with Backblaze. What's up, Brian Tong here with Apple's new MacBook Air review. You see it right here. It is lovely, and the MacBook Air was really the standard for design. It was touted as the world's thinnest notebook. Steve Jobs introduced it with catchy phrases and a TV commercial that just showed it fit in a manila envelope, and I still love that ad, so there's just a lot of nostalgia when you just look back at this MacBook. But this Air has evolved over the years and is now Apple's most affordable MacBook. The upgrades for the 2020 version really refine this laptop and just make it a compelling upgrade for a first Mac or anyone who really just wants in on the Apple ecosystem. And I think this is still arguably the most elegantly designed piece of hardware with its wedge design and blade-like thinness that tapers down from 0.63 inches to 0.16 inches. Like, I could literally slice cabbage in half with this, but I won't. Now, it weighs in at 2.8 pounds. You'll get the headphone jack and two Thunderbolt 3 USB-C ports. It's a 13.3-inch Retina display with True Tone. That's a staple here. And you've got all the connectivity you can expect with 802.11ac and Bluetooth 5.0, so there's no Wi-Fi 6 here. And if you're moving media onto this via SD cards or you just want a direct Ethernet connection, you use a dongle or hub, and that's going to be required. But the biggest improvement that instantly will just change your experience from previous models is the addition of Apple's Magic Keyboard. It uses their new scissor switch keyboard design and gives you that 1mm key travel on a MacBook Air. And if you know me, I've been begging for Apple for years to just bring back this style of a keyboard ever since they switched over to the butterfly style. But this scissor switch keyboard is even better than before, and it's really evolved with a new keycap structure. So the keys, they won't wobble. Now, I love it on the 16-inch MacBook Pro. I love it on this new MacBook Air. And also, right, you have the keyboard. It's backlit. It has a Touch ID button on the corner and the inverted T-design arrow keys. The other keyboard feature that I love about this machine is the one that's not there. There is no touch bar, so you'll have individual buttons with a tactile response and direct access to volume level and brightness without an extra step. And, you know, if you've watched my stuff, I've never been the biggest fan of the touch bar on the MacBook Pros, but using the MacBook Air reminds me why. And if this is going to be your daily driver, this updated keyboard is going to make all the difference. Now, you're also going to get a performance boost with Intel's latest 10th Gen Ice Lake processors. The base model starts at $999 and has a dual-core i3 processor, but the new MacBook Air, it jumps up to a quad-core with i5 and i7 configurations that can bring up twice the performance. So it also brings the integrated Intel Iris Plus graphics for an 80% boost in graphics performance. Apple provided me with this review unit, and this one is a 1.1 gigahertz Core i5 model. It has 8 gigs of RAM and also 512 gigs of solid-state drive storage. So this is really Apple's middle-tier MacBook Air that starts at $1299. Now, of course, I wanted to put these through the test, so I ran the Geekbench 5 benchmarks for both CPU performance and GPU metal performance 5 times to get an average score. For CPU performance, the 2020 MacBook Air averaged a single-core performance score of 1,145.8 and a multi-core score of 2,524.6. Now, if we go over to the GPU side, its metal scores had an average score of 8,280.4. And let's compare these to the late 2018 MacBook Air models, and you're really getting the performance you expect. So with the 2018 models having a CPU single-core score of 754 and a multi-core score of 1,524, you can see the difference there. But then let's also have some fun here, because some people will really be making a decision between this year's MacBook Air and the 2020 iPad Pro with the A12Z processor and Magic Keyboard. So let's compare their performance head-to-head. And if you look at the iPad Pro's Geekbench 5 numbers, it had an average single-core score of 1,126 and a multi-core score of 4,894. That's obviously a significant difference in multi-core score performance compared to the 2020 MacBook Air. And if you're looking at GPU metal performance, the 2020 iPad Pro had an average score of 9,737 8.8. That also bests this MacBook Air. Now, you also have to look at it this way. These performance scores are only part of this story, and it clearly shows that this year's iPad Pro is no chump, even with just an A12Z. But even with that edge, it can't run higher-end apps that are made on a Mac that the MacBook Air can. So we're talking about Final Cut Pro, Logic Pro, Adobe Premiere, full Photoshop. The MacBook Air may not give you all the power you need for those apps at its highest level, but you can still capably run them on it, and you can absolutely edit video on the Air with those apps. You can't do that on an iPad Pro, not yet. So the choice between MacBook Air and iPad Pro, it comes down to how you're gonna use them and which device is best for you, even if one may have more power than the other. Now, the MacBook Air also doubles the standard storage from the previous generation, so this starts at 256 gigs of solid state drive storage and goes up to 2 terabytes if you want to go there. Battery life is roughly 11 hours for web surfing and then 12 hours for video playback. I was able to get through a normal workday, honestly, without any problem. And then the low-key feature here that might surprise you, with the MacBook Air, it supports one external display up to 6K at 60 Hertz. So that means it supports one of Apple's XDR displays if you ever decide to go big like that. It can also support a single 5K display at 60 Hertz and then also up to 2 4K displays. The speakers here are another big improvement. They have just more oomph with twice the bass. They have 25% more volume and then support Dolby Atmos sound. You know how much I love that. So that makes you feel like the audio and specific effects are coming from different locations when you're watching movies that support it. They've also taken the 3 microphone array system from the MacBook Pro for high quality audio recording and put it in this Air. So you can record audio directly from the MacBook Air and it gives you some very good sounding audio. Just like what you're hearing right now, this is all being done directly from the MacBook Air. So it's surprising and can more than pass for something that you can use in a podcast or voiceover if you're in a quiet room. And they've just really improved and fine-tuned the MacBook Air in every way this year. My only complaint is that I still want a 1080p FaceTime camera in all of Apple's notebooks. I know it's not a deal breaker, but this one is still at 720p, guys, and I'll just keep bringing it up until it gets updated. Now, if you ask me also what's one feature that I'd love to have on this machine, and maybe it's something for way further down the road, I'd still love to have a basic touchscreen on their entire MacBook lineup. Even if it's just to touch to scroll up and down web pages, look at photos with some pinching and zooming, or click on apps directly to open them on the screen. I'm not looking for a full touch integration at every level that's super sophisticated, but just a few basic features that won't confuse everyone. It's been my wish for a while, but since this is my review video, I could just bring it up. But if you think about that, if that's my biggest request, that tells you just how much they've really, again, perfected and fine-tuned this to make it the most polished MacBook Air that we have ever seen, and it'll likely be its best-selling Mac for 2020. Now, the entry-level Air starts at $999 for Apple users that are doing the normal stuff like web surfing, email, and word processing. If you wanted to max one out, and let's just do it for fun, we're gonna get the Core i7 processor, bump up to 16 gigs of RAM, and then 2 terabytes of storage. You're looking at $2,249 before the $249 for AppleCare and then tax as well. But I would absolutely push people who want to do a little more creative work with photos and videos to at least just make the jump up to a Core i5 or even Core i7 if you have the money to support that, and if you're someone that really just has to have the slimmer, smaller MacBook Air form factor. Now, we all know, though, that there are plenty non-Apple laptops that are priced cheaper, but part of getting this is you're also buying into the ecosystem, and there's real benefit to it. So I would just say if there's one Mac that I could pretty much recommend to anyone as a daily driver that wants to play with a little bit of content creation in the Apple ecosystem, this 2020 MacBook Air is absolutely the one to get. Thanks again to Backblaze for sponsoring this video. Backblaze offers unlimited computer backups for Macs and PCs for just $6 a month. Backup all your data, your docs, your music, your photos, those extra special photos you send to extra special people, videos, projects, everything you can think of. There's no gimmicks or add-ons, just $6 a month. You can also restore your files anywhere by directly downloading them on the web or restoring them by mail. What's restore by mail? Well, this is pretty cool. You can have a flash key or hard drive restore shipped to your home by Backblaze, and they'll overnight FedEx it. Then you'll have 30 days to return the drive back for a full refund. There's a mobile app to access and download your files on the go from anywhere in the world with over 50 billion files restored for customers. It's recommended by the New York Times, Inc., Macworld, Tom's Guide, and yours truly, and so many others. So go to backblaze.com/Brian Tong right now to get a 15-day fully featured free trial and try uploading and downloading some files, because seriously, you need to back up all your stuff, and as a creator, I absolutely need to back up my stuff as well. So that's backblaze.com/Brian Tong. Get a peace of mind knowing your files are backed up securely in the cloud with Backblaze.